If you're thinking about buying your first camera, moving to a new camera system, or upgrading cameras, should you go full frame? Should you go APS-C? It's a question that a lot of people mull over and they give a lot of thought to. If we're talking about what's on paper, the specs of the cameras, full frame is normally going to look like the better option most of the time, especially now as the price difference between APS-C and full frame cameras is closer than it's ever been before. But the question still remains, do you need to spend the extra money to get full frame? Or can you even tell the difference anyway? For me, it comes down to a few key points. ISO and low light performance, that full frame look, that's probably the one that you've heard most. If you shoot super wide, can you go APS-C? And then the costs of lenses for each system, because there's a big difference. Now I want to start by saying that most modern Sony cameras, both full frame and APS-C, shoot 4K video at actually 6K, and they downsample it to 4K. If you were to put those videos side by side, one from each camera, you're probably not going to be able to tell that much of a difference. So if you're concerned mostly about video quality, don't really worry. In controlled environments like a studio like this or in bright daylight environments, both shoot fantastic video, have great quality, and you're really not going to be able to tell that much of a difference. So now on to my points about the main differences between APS-C and full frame. So first off, the major one, ISO and low light performance. So to make it really simple for you, the main difference between an APS-C camera here and a full frame camera, which I can't show you because I'm shooting on right now, but the main difference is the sensor size. So just inside there, that is the sensor. That is what collects the information which basically creates your videos and your photos. In an APS-C camera, it's smaller than it is in a full frame camera. Essentially, that means it's always going to be better in low light. The sensor can get more light into it, and that's just why it's better in low light. Now with that also comes the ability to shoot higher ISOs with less noise. So if I'm shooting the same image with an A7 III and an A6400, both are at 10,000 ISO, you're going to see that the A6400 has more noise in it than the A7 III is. That's just the way that it works. So for me, I just prefer to shoot with my A7 III in lower light environments because I know it means I'm going to have less noise, a better image quality than if I was to shoot that same image at the same ISO with my APS-C A6400. There's a test that I'm running on the screen right now. I went from 1,000 to 4,000 to 8,000 and then 10,000 ISO. And you'll see that when we go up, there's more noise on the A6400, which is exactly what I'd expect. You go even higher, let's say 20,000, 40,000 ISO, the quality of the video with the APS-C camera is going to fall apart a lot quicker. It's going to get a lot more noise in it quicker than it's going to with the A7 III. I keep pointing at the camera. I'm filming with the A7 III, and that's why. So that for me is one of the biggest things, and probably one of the biggest things that you're always reading about. Why go full frame over APS-C? That and the next point, which is that full frame look. Specifically, how bokeh the images look, how much the background disappears compared to an APS-C camera. So here's an example video. Both cameras are at the same focal length, same aperture. See if you can tell which one's which. So we've got the 1635 f4 on the A6400 and then the 24mm f1.4, but we're shooting at f4 on the A7 III. Both are at f4. Can you tell which one is which? Nice and close. You're just looking for which one gives you that full frame look. Can you tell the difference? Did you guess right? Can you even tell? So I did put the titles at the end there just so you could see which one was which. To me, it's definitely obvious which one is the full frame camera and which one is the APS-C camera. But it's subtle. It's not huge, but it's enough of a difference for me to at least notice, and I'm sure you probably picked up on it too. So that is exactly what we talk about when we mean the full frame look. Here's another example at f1.8. Now this one's a little bit more skewed because I didn't have exactly the same focal length on each lens. You got the difference between a 55 and the equivalent of a 45mm. So there's a little bit of a difference in focal length, but the important thing here to look at is the aperture. And remember, this is at f1.8. And now we're doing the same test at f1.8. Can you tell the difference? Which one is which? Both are at f1.8. One is on a full frame, the other is on an APS-C. Which one is which? So the next one is one important to me because I like to shoot a lot of these things. And that is how wide your shots are, specifically super wide, and what you have available in terms of lenses for APS-C. So if you like to shoot architecture, you're a landscape photographer, if you like to vlog, real estate photography, any of those things, you typically want nice, big, wide shots. Now, before you start saying this guy has no idea what he's talking about, there's tons of options. I mean specifically autofocus lenses. There's a ton of manual focus lenses, I know that. I mean autofocus. With APS-C, there's really only one option, and that's the 10-18 from Sony. That is really the only super wide autofocus lens that you have out there right now. I mean, that could change in the future, but right now, that is the one really that you'd have to buy if you want to shoot any of those things. At 10mm, you're getting the equivalent of 15, which is great for all of those things. But if you want a different lens, you don't like that lens, you don't like f4, you're kind of stuck. With full frame, you really have a ton of options to pick from. You got the 1635 f4, you got the 1635 f2.8 G Master, the newer Tamron 1728 f2.8, a little bit of a tighter option, but the baddest 18mm is another one out there. The super wide Sony 12-24 f4 is out there as well. The Sigma 14-24 f2.8. But you get my point, there is a lot of options out there for full frame. So if you like that super wide look and you want to have the option of multiple lenses, or you don't like f4, you really have to go full frame. There isn't really much of a choice. Again, you can go 24 if you want to, but I don't consider that wide enough in some situations. If I'm shooting real estate, for example, 24 doesn't cut it. Some rooms are tiny and you just can't shoot a tiny room with a 24mm lens. You need a 16 or below. Also, the 10-18 is an f4. APS-C already isn't quite as good as full frame in low light, so you kind of get where I'm going there. I'm not trying to come off as biased, I'm literally explaining to you as it is. The harsh truth, if you want to call it that. If you're on the fence, you're not too sure, 16-24 is that much of a difference, here's some examples for you. So here's a great example of what I mean. I have the 16-50 f3.5 to 5.6 on the A6400 right there, and the 1635 f4 on the A7 III right there. So one of these is super wide and the other one is going to be the equivalent of 24. So we've got 24 and 16. If you really like the look of the super wide, the 16 right here, then you're not really going to have many options available to you if you want to go with APS-C. Big difference in terms of how wide you can get. Personal preference, but if you like to shoot super wide, you don't have as many options available to you. Good to know. And remember as well that 16 super wide is going to look better for vlogging than 24 will, depending on the look you want to go for. If you want that super wide look, then you're going to want that 16. Now the final point of what I'm going to talk about, the cost of lenses. Now the A7 III is a very, very aggressively priced camera. It's letting more and more people jump into this full frame world and just look at an APS-C camera and then look at a full frame camera and go, oh, it's a couple $100 more. I'll just get the full frame, which is great. It's getting a ton of people into the world of full frame. But unless you really know what you're getting yourself into, you're going to be in for a shock. The cost of lenses for full frame versus APS-C is nothing short of astronomical. You can spend thousands and thousands, literally thousands of dollars on full frame glass. So you might buy this camera and then not have any money for lenses, or you buy a full frame camera and now you can only use APS-C lenses because that's all you can afford, which is okay, that works, but it comes with its own set of limitations. So full frame glass isn't cheap. We can make this really straightforward and really simple. The Sigma 16mm f1.4 for APS-C, probably the most popular wide lens out there. Fantastic lens, I owned it for a couple of years. I don't own it anymore because I don't have a need for it. But that lens is $400 US, the equivalent of 530 Canadian. If you want to get the exact same lens, which is a 24mm, because remember 16 is the equivalent of 24. Sigma 24mm f1.4, they actually made that exact lens for Sony full frame. $839 US. More than double the cost of the Sigma 16mm f1.4. You want to go Sony? No problem. Stick with a native, that's okay, I get it. The Sony 24mm f1.4 G Master. Fantastic lens. Shooting this video with it right now, probably my favorite lens. $1,398 US. More than 3 times the cost of the Sigma 16mm f1.4. So hopefully you see what I'm saying, and we can go on all day. You can compare every lens out there. It's always the same story. Sony full frame glass is expensive. So you need to be aware of that when you're going in and buying a full frame camera or moving from APS-C to full frame. It's not just buying a camera. If you want to buy good glass, you want to buy a specific set of lenses, especially primes, they're very, very expensive. Now you might be thinking, oh, that's okay, I'll just use APS-C lenses on my full frame camera. And you'd be right, you can do that. For video, it's going to work great. Just bear in mind, you're not going to have that little bit of a crop. You can't go in 1.5 times. For video, that's okay normally. But for photos, if you need the most megapixels that you can get, so the A7 III has 24 megapixels, you're not going to get 24 megapixels out of an APS-C lens. You're only going to get 10. That's because your camera will default to APS-C mode. You can force it to go into full frame mode, but you're going to get so much vignetting that you won't even be able to use that image. So you're only going to get 10 megapixels in APS-C mode with an APS-C lens on a full frame camera like the A7 III. Now, there are positives with going with APS-C over full frame. Two big ones. Size of bodies. Now, I've got a cage on here right now, so it is a little bit bigger. But in general, APS-C bodies are a lot smaller, they're a lot lighter. So it means they just pack easier in a bag, less stress on your back if you're carrying them around for the day. And to go with that, the lenses are typically a lot smaller as well. So that is a big benefit of APS-C. The other big one is the extra reach that shooting a full frame lens on an APS-C camera will give you. So for example, the 70-200 maxes out at 200 on a full frame camera. But if you were to put that onto an APS-C camera, that 200 now goes to the equivalent of 300. It's really useful, especially when you need to stand at a wedding right at the back out the way and you need that a little bit of extra reach. It's incredibly convenient, has a very specific time and a place, but when you need it, it's great to use. And it's one of the reasons that I really do like shooting with my A6400 still. It just gives me that extra little bit of reach. Now, there are other details to consider as well. Little smaller differences, things like design features. A6400 has a flip screen, incredibly useful. Full frame cameras typically have more custom buttons on them. Full frame cameras have better battery life. They use the bigger Sony Z-style batteries, but then with some of the new APS-C cameras like the 6600, they have a bigger grip, take that new Z-style battery. So I really didn't want to touch on these things too much because these have the potential to change with each new camera body that comes out. They may decide in all their new APS-C cameras moving forward, so they all take the Z-style battery. The A7 III II, no, the A7 IV, that may have a flip screen in it too, who knows? So you get what I'm saying. I didn't want to talk on these things too much because they have the potential to change. The things I've talked about today in detail, those are things that are big differences between the APS-C and full frame cameras, and they're not likely to change anytime soon. Remember, there is no bad decision. It's literally picking a camera based off of your needs and what you're going to be using that camera for. That's why I made this video, is to help you see what the major differences are and do you need that or do you not need that. And the beauty of E-mount is that full frame lenses will work on APS-C, APS-C lenses will work on full frame. Yes, sometimes there's a few limitations, but the actual lens will connect to the body, no problem, and you're going to be able to use it. You don't need an adapter, you don't need to go buy something special to put on your camera so you can use it like other brands. Sony's not like that. E-mount is a very good system for using between both. And then if you want to go even further and buy a high-end, super expensive, remortgage your house cinema camera, they're also E-mount. And then you can go pick up your Sigma 30mm f1.4 and put that on an FS7, and you probably wouldn't do that. But if you wanted to, you could. Hopefully this video helped you out today, maybe taught you something, maybe helped you make the decision as to whether you're going to go full frame, go APS-C, maybe you didn't know something. If it did, great. That's exactly why I made the video. And if you somehow found this video and you weren't already subscribed, consider clicking that little subscribe button down below. I would appreciate it. I'm not going to force you, but it might help you out. I got a ton of old videos that you might find useful and lots of good ones coming too in the future. So there we go. Thank you for watching today. I do appreciate it. That's that. I'll see you guys in the next video. Unless you're not subscribed, in which case I probably won't. See you later. I'm wrapping up some tests for APS-C versus full frame. How uneasy does this make you? Just attached with that little thing right there. Great vlogging setup here if you need two pretty much identical angles. Also, if you can't get to the gym that day, because it's pretty heavy.